their barrier better than they do, when you help them through that barrier, they will tell you secrets.
They will tell me secrets. As part of your training to become a CIA officer, you must have learned how to manipulate people. That seems to me, from what I know of spies, pretty foundational to what it is to be a successful spy and to get information from someone else. In this conversation today, are we going to learn how, through your training, you were taught to get information from people and make them do what you wanted them to do?
Yes. And I'll be very frank here. I try to exercise something called radical transparency. If you want to manipulate people, you will learn that from this conversation. If you want to manipulate people, I will teach you how to manipulate people. In just a simple conversation, you can learn those skills. But the thing to understand that's the most important is that whether you want to manipulate or not, others are manipulating you just because you don't know what they're doing, right? The problem with being an intelligence operator is that to achieve the things you have to achieve, you sometimes have to do things that you don't want to do. In being a business owner, what I've discovered is that many business owners struggle because they feel like they have to do things they don't want to do. They feel like they have to be sleazy. They feel like they have to be tricky. They feel like they have to mimic, shyster, bad guy business owners, right? The flip side, if you think of a coin, one side of that coin is manipulation. And that coin has value. Manipulation has value. But the other side of the same coin is motivation. If you can get people to do what they want to do, then you have motivated them. And that is worth just as much as getting people to do what you want them to do, which is manipulating them.
We'll get into all of that, but I want to understand where you came from, because I think this is quite pertinent to both your work as a CIA officer, but also there's really interesting sort of psychological elements to why the CIA chose you that are deep within your childhood story. Going right back to the beginning of your life, what is the most important context we need to understand you?
I think the most important thing to understand from my childhood is that I was raised by my mom. My father died. My father was killed before I was born. He died in a violent crime in California. I didn't know him ever. And my mom had to start life with a newborn son, not just as a single mom, but also as the single mom of a man who was killed in a crime. So it was my mom and my grandma that raised me from very young. My mom is a woman of color. She's Latina. My father was American Indian. So there was an element of racial diversity in 1980 when I was born that also kind of played a role in all of that. And the reason that that's important is not because of what happened in the past. It's because from that foundation, my mom married a Caucasian man who became my stepdad, who became my adopted father as well. And I had to kind of learn how to come of age, or literally come of age, in a household where I didn't know my father. I had a stepdad who was Caucasian with two half sisters who were Caucasian. And my stepdad's whole goal was to just pull my mom as far away from her roots as possible, because he didn't want to deal with all the drama that comes from being part of a Catholic Latin family. And my mom was all for that, but nevertheless, like that was the kind of soup that I came out of.
What were the needs that were going unmet in your life at that point?
You do not ask easy questions, man. So I did not feel loved. Growing up, I did not feel loved. My mother loved me, and I know logically and rationally that she loved me. But my mother was a cold woman. She was focused on career success. She was focused on feminism. She was focused on other things. I as an adult now, my sisters and I often reflect on the fact that we think our mom was the kind of woman that didn't want to be a mom. But it was expected of her to be a mom, so therefore she became a mom. So there wasn't a lot of love. There wasn't a lot of emotional support. There was plenty of academic support. And it was always hard because the academic support came, I think, as a way of making sure that they didn't have to provide the other support. Because if you have an academically successful student who turns 18, they can get the fuck out of the house and you can have your life back. And I think that was the mission for my mom, was just academic success, be successful so I don't have to take care of you, because I'm not really good at this whole hugging, loving thing. And I just want you gone. So I feel like that was my mom. My dad and my mom, I think, had a marriage that was based in a common set of objectives more so than shared love. And they were just kind of pursuing those objectives. And I was fortunate because from that, I was cultivated to be a hardworking academic success. And that led to a full ride scholarship, and that led to, success in other parts of life. But for sure, it left behind a trail of always wondering who loves me in my family. Is love even important in a family? Does it matter? Or am I being too focused on this whole love thing? As an example, I tell this story because it's totally normal to me, but a lot of other people find it surprising. There was a day where my mom pulled me aside. I was having an argument with my stepdad, and I went to my mom looking for support. And I asked her to support me. I was like, do you love me? Right? Do you love me, or do you love dad more? And she looked at me and she was like, of course I love your dad more than I love you, because you're my son. I have to love you. You were born to me. I must love you, but it's a choice to love your dad. So I have to love him more because it's a choice. And for me, I will never forget that conversation. I'll never forget the look on my mom's face. It was so simple and so academic and so clear to her. And it's never been something I could ever actually accept. And even now, as a husband and a father myself, I don't understand how that was logically sound to her. I don't know how you could ever actually prioritize who you love.
All of that, as you've said, as the resulted in your academic success and your focus and all of those kinds of things. But at what cost?
I mean, it makes you kind of fucked up, man. It makes you feel like, first of all, it makes you feel like your secrets are justified. It makes you feel like you must have secrets because there's nobody that you can talk to about certain things. I remember for many years, you can't take your love life to mom and dad. You can't tell them the girl that you think is cute. You can't talk to them about not getting picked to go to the prom dance or anything like that. You can't talk about that with them because they don't care. And you can't trust your sisters. You can't trust your mom. You can't trust your dad. You can't trust the people in your own house. So because you can't trust them and because you can't take certain things to them, you must keep secrets. And since you must keep secrets, you must be allowed to keep secrets. There must be secrets that are totally acceptable that they are also keeping from you. So I grew up in a world where secrets were something that was very normal. And then from that, you start to learn that if secrets are normal, then lying must also be normal and totally acceptable. So there's a level of sociopathy that develops when you feel like you're on your own. And that's something that most people out there who are loners, who have grown up in that world, they learn to understand that there are certain elements of social behavior that are not culturally acceptable, but as long as you don't talk about them, you can practice them. So that's a big part of what I learned personally, was that secrets, how to keep secrets, that secrets are normal, how to lie without being caught, and more importantly, that there is a very real difference between the people who are raised in a world where they trust people, they trust others, and because they trust others, they have a built-in vulnerability, a built-in deficiency of compared to the people who are raised in a world where they don't trust others. Because when you're raised in a world where you don't trust, you can always learn to trust. But when you're raised in a world where you trust first, it's very difficult to train that person to know when to not trust someone else.
How do you feel about that wiring that you have because of that experience?
I mean, it's sad. I'm doing everything in my power to not wire my children the same way that I was wired. So I do believe that there is a faulty wiring that happened. But at the same time, it's been very valuable to me. It's been very productive and valuable in terms of what I've been able to experience, what I've been able to see and do financially, economically, relationally. I benefit and value. And this is a big challenge that I have, is as much as I sit here telling friends, and like I'm telling you, secrets, because this is what happens. We tell people secrets when they trust you. When I share with you the challenges of growing up, it's important to me that I don't sound like I'm complaining or whining, because I had a fantastic foundation for success after that. But I define success in all the ways that I was trained to define success, financially, economically, empirically, not based on how I feel internally.
Have you had to do a lot of work to